Alright, well, welcome everybody to another stream. After having not done one for like 7 months, I'm doing multiple back-to-back, which I find interesting. One moment, please. I have to repeatedly check to make sure that the microphone is going, because I streamed my first stream, the mic wasn't on. My second stream, it was going good, and then the mic started cutting out towards the end because I have a busted mic and I need to buy a new one.
Hey, MJ,
and this one,
okay?
Oh god.
I'm fine. Combing through Oscorp records.
Alright. I apologize. I wonder if there's a way to turn off in-game dialogue in the settings.
To find the best pizza in the city? Yeah. 10-hour odyssey for
Oh god. I've been...
How could I forget?
I'll let them finish.
Something about all these old Oscorp files made that day pop into my head. Harry's so excited about riding the ferry. Just made me think about how much simpler things were back then. No jobs and supervillains. Throw away a whole day looking for bad pizza just cause. Now it feels like if we take a nap, the world will fall apart.
Yeah. This adult thing is rough. But I guess the work we do means today's kids can have their own Staten Island adventures. In safety. It's kind of a circle of life thing.
Circle of bad pizza. Yeah, you're right.
Funny.
That's a good way to look at it.
I apologize, but I've mentioned this in my other streams. I've played through this game so many times. It's just getting irritating that there's no way to turn off that in-game dialogue, because there's a shit ton of it, and it's great, but I've heard it too many times, and it's starting to get old. But this stream, the last two streams, I've just been rambling, obviously, and I was just aimlessly talking with no real topic in mind, and I was like, you know what, I could do with an actual thing to talk about, and I didn't know what to talk about, because I don't do politics. I don't like talking about the state of the world much. I don't want to fucking talk about, like, climate change or gun control. When I do, I start getting mad, so I said, you know what, history. That'll be the thing, history and mythology, because those are my jam. I actually, for a brief period of time before I realized it was a bad idea, wanted to become a history teacher. But, you know, that fell through because I don't do children. I don't like kids. And in the U.S., you have to start out in elementary school, apparently, so I didn't want to do that. But I said, you know what, I'm not going to stop loving mythology and history. So I've been kind of just expanding my knowledge on it, I guess you could say, and there's a lot to learn about history. So I said, you know what, there's a lot of things I like talking about that people seem to have never heard about. So I said, you know what, hell, this stream for about, I don't know, half an hour or so, I'm just going to talk about things I like in history. Well, you know what? One moment. I have an idea. Bam. Now the game. There you go. That's better. I'm an idiot. This is what I did last stream on accident when I didn't want to, and now it's perfect. I have a party open just so I can check my mic audio because I'm unprofessional as shit. But I wanted to talk about history and a few things that people may or may not know about, because I like watching history channels and stuff talk about. Like one of the first things I want to talk about is Genghis Khan, who I think his name was originally Temujin. And because I, throughout my whole high school life, was taught, you know, Mongol big stupid ape man smash wall of China like chopstick, and it's like, no, not even remotely were they stupid. So I'm just gonna, it's not gonna be super detailed. Well, at least I'll describe the events, but I'm not good with names. I can tell you what went on, but not who was involved. If you want to do that, there's a channel on YouTube called Extra Credits, and they do little animatics, well, frame-by-frame animations, like still images of amazing events in history, and they did a series on Genghis Khan. But I like talking about it because I found it very interesting. So Genghis Khan started out life in the steppes, and the Mongols, as they had been for many generations, they were tribes people, like nomadic, multiple tribes running around, stealing from each other, raiding nearby like countries and stuff, but not very far into them. They weren't very organized because it was a bunch of different clans. And for, I think it had been a few decades, I think nearly 100, 200 years or so, more than 100 years, and since they'd had the last quote-unquote Great Khan, which is the leader of the Mongols, like whenever they were a unified tribe. And Temujin had been born with his mom. And I believe when his mom was pregnant with him, she was no, his mom. Okay, I apologize. I'll when I start getting on a roll, I'll get it. But so he was, as a child, he was born to an unremarkable family, and his mom was kidnapped, and she was taken hostage by this other guy. And Temujin grew up and was raised with this other group of people, and I believe she was kidnapped a second time when Temujin was a child, and he had to run away because his family was raided, and he managed to get in with another village. I'm skipping over a lot of his early life because it was interesting, but I prefer his later life and how the Mongols functioned in war. That's the part that I preferred to learn about more. That's when I'll start going into more depth. But basically, so through a series of events, he gets brought on with this other tribe, where he meets another guy who they were blood brothers for a long time. Him and his blood brother become almost second in command to this older gentleman who runs a tribe. And throughout his life, early life, Temujin, at a very, very, very young age, managed to go through, and he starts just absolutely destroying every one of his opponents. And what he did that was very unique, because this is where I'm going to start trying to go into a bit more detail, because his early life, I'm sorry I glossed over it, that's a part that I didn't really care to remember much of. It was interesting, but he had a fucked up childhood. That's most of what you needed to know. And he, unlike the savage most people took him for, whenever he had set rules and codes for his warriors. So they had a system of honor. So his tribe, he started kind of trying to build up his own thing. As he started building it up, he had a system that was very different to other tribes. He had a system it was one of the earliest forms of almost a democracy, you could say, because they had kind of a monarchistic, this guy is in charge, we listen to this guy now. And Temujin said, no, I want a council of my greatest advisors and people from kind of all ranks and walks of life to, sit down, and we're going to discuss matters as a group. He's like, I can't know everything, so I'm going to have all these people I'm with actually sit beside me and work together, and we will function as a whole rather than me just be Big Dick Man. And this was one of the many, many things he did reform-wise. He also actually would kind of almost indoctrinate slaves in his society. Not quite slaves. If he captured a group of people, they would do some shit. There was for a time, he would round up all the men and soldiers and line them up next to a wagon, and if their head came over the axle of the wagon wheel, they'd be murdered. And I don't know if he did that with every tribe, but he did that with a lot of them. And the people who he didn't kill, or who were deemed who shouldn't have been killed, were actually indoctrinated into his society and given homes and treated like people. He was like, you've been through enough, you're still Mongols, we need to work together. And he kind of unified them in a way that actually made becoming a Khan possible. He's not like, I will crush all other Mongols and I will be the biggest Mongol. He's like, no, I will create the greatest tribe of people, not I will be the greatest Mongol, I will make the greatest group. And they started expanding wildly, and eventually he managed to trounce his fucking friend. That's a whole part of his life. But he eventually does get to become, after the hundreds of years for the Mongol people, he becomes the next Khan. And this is where this absolute mad lad kicks shit into overdrive. So the Mongols are much different than a lot of people seem to think they are. I was always taught mostly just they were barbarians. But oh my god, the Mongols trained super hard. And a thing they did, which is part of what made them such potent warriors, because they were still rather nomadic. They'd still move around and navigate through camp. Also, one more thing before I continue on with the military tactics. A thing he implemented into the military is there used to be a system of looting. And it would be people just take whatever they could and try and hide it. What Temujin would do, and there was obviously immense punishment if you disobeyed this, he would have all the troops round up all the loot together in a pool, and each man would be divvied loot equally. And another thing he did, which was insane, they'd set aside a pool of loot for those families who'd been widowed, for wives and kids whose family members had died in the fight, so that they wouldn't, go hungry since they no longer had their family member to provide for them. So Temujin would make sure that they were well fed and cared for. But back to military tactics. So Mongols, they were nomadic. So they had to move, which was a huge... Normally it would be an issue because they only fought in the arid mountains for so long. And I'll keep going for a little bit. I'm going to finish the Mongol story, and I think I'll do a longer stream tomorrow talking about myths and stuff. But they were training in arid mountain regions, you'd think, because I thought the same thing. But what they do is they'd train for all different kinds of environments. They would be prepared. It was one of those things where a plan for almost every situation. And the Mongols, it was like no matter what environment they ended up in, they'd still have strategies for each, like arid, desert, jungle, forest. The motherfuckers would have anything to do in any environment they ended up in, so they always had a plan. And another thing he did, which made him revolutionize the Mongol army, is he was big on improving Mongol learning and society. So what he'd do is, rather than just being a stupid barbarian, he would go to countries where, I think it was like the Islamic states, because this was back in their time, because for those of you who don't know, down during the like Arabic and Islamic regions used to be like a huge, like titanic boon of knowledge and learning. And Genghis Khan was like, hey, I could do with some of that. So he would actually recruit these people. He wouldn't go and kidnap them and hold them hostage. He'd be like, hey, come join us. And there's shitloads of silk and gold and spices. He's like, you will live like a king if you come and help teach my people. So he gathered all these great architects and scholars, and he started just learning. And his military, partially due to the fact that they started recruiting all these people to learn and it kind of evolved their society in such a short span of time, became masters of siege warfare. Like, he would also, on the battlefield... Also, another thing I'll implement, this is something about the way the military was formed. He also had a system where, unlike, again, a lot of militaries, like the better ones all do this, but throughout history, a lot of militaries obviously had that thing of, this is the general, do what the general says, all of you. He had, almost like modern day militaries do, and like the Romans did, he had like different divisions, and there's like a head of a group of like 6 people, and then he reports to a head of like 12 groups of 6 people, then he reports to a guy, and they report, and he'd have a system of military ranks so orders could be carried out quickly, and each of the leaders on each different tier had a certain level of autonomy with their troops. So should the situation change, it wasn't like, oh god, can someone get a hold of Khan? Oh god, no, what do we do? Each individual person in charge had wiggle room. So it was like, shit, this has changed, alright, everybody do this. Because he would put a modicum of trust in his men to be like, hey, I know that you are a trained warrior and I trust you to act as such. You are in charge for a reason. And he would let them be autonomous almost. So they would have a plan to follow, and anything that went wrong, they had liberty to go off the wall and start trying to salvage it however they could. So this actually gave them a lot more room to be more advanced than a lot of other armies. Because if anything started going wrong, everybody could do their own separate thing to try and fix it. Or obviously follow whatever plan if there was one. But they were, going back on topic, they were masters of siege warfare. There's actually a story of, I'm going to call him Genghis now, because he changed his name, obviously, from Temujin to Genghis Khan. And one time there was a city, and I think it was either in China or an Arabic country, one of those two. There was a fort that they'd been sieging that he was having some difficulty dealing with, because it was heavily fortified. And I know this plan backfired a bit, but it actually worked to a degree. So what Temujin did was, there was a nearby river, and rather than just normally siege the city, what he had his troops do was divert the river with a big culvert to actually flood the whole goddamn city. And they built, I think they also built up a dam to make it flood harder, but they built this like system of waterworks and a dam to actually flood and wash away the walls of the city, which ended up washing away some of his men, but in the end actually worked. because they developed like siege towers and like all types of equipment. They were masters. They were extremely advanced when it came to warfare, which is how they ended up in their time conquering, I think, the largest swath of land other than maybe Alexander the Great. But I'm pretty sure within one empire he holds the history's record for like most land owned under like a contiguous connected land, like the biggest chunk of land all touching itself, unlike the British Empire. They were obviously the biggest, but that was scattered all over the world. But he, in his short lifetime, took over everything. And the only reason, also, he started all this reign of warfare started when this man was 40, and he died in, I think, his 60s or 70s. So in like 20 to 30 years, not over hundreds of years like the British Empire tearing through Europe, in his like 30-year lifespan, this absolute goddamn legend took over the largest contiguous swath of land in history. That is grounds for being in any Hall of Fame, period. And schools don't teach that. I didn't know that. I thought, oh, barbarian, horseman, haha, funny, stupid ape man. He was a fucking genius and very, very revolutionary for his time in the way he ran the Mongol society. Unfortunately, it immediately fell apart as soon as he died because he made the mistake so many great leaders do. This is like, it's almost guaranteed to always do this, male or female, like Catherine the Great did the same thing. They get everything set up perfectly. They have this society up and running to a T. But I think extra credits put it perfectly when they mention the same thing happened to Otto von Bismarck. The error with these people is they can't envision, I'll put it in their exact words for Otto von Bismarck. The problem with Bismarck was Bismarck could envision a perfect world and start making it that way, but Bismarck could not envision a world without Bismarck. These people are legendary and do all this amazing work, but they don't plan for when they're gone. They have a plan, and it never revolves around them dying until it's too late. Like Catherine the Great never... I'm not saying she needed to like marry or have a proper heir, but she didn't have any real system in place for what to do when she was gone. She did a lot, but nothing was planned for when she was dead. Same for Temujin. He had throughout a lot of his life neglected his sons because he was constantly on military campaigns. So he was never there to teach them his ways, to train them like he was. Because of his rough childhood, he was kind of taught a lot about life. And he never got to teach his kids those lessons. He never even got to teach them the basics of warfare like he knew. And he never got to properly set up the Mongol Empire for how it'd be divided when he was gone. So as soon as he died, his kids just tore everything apart, dismantled all this work within like one lifetime. I think maybe two. I think one of his kids was good, and then immediately after that, everything went to shit. But in such a short span of time, it was ruined. Same for Otto von Bismarck, a man who I might discuss next time a little bit. But I'd have to rewatch the series. Next time I do one of these, I think I might actually want to research like exact dates and times. But Otto von Bismarck was a huge player during the World War I scene. Actually, no, he predicted World War I almost to a T, like within a month or two, which is fucking insane. But he had that same issue, and same for Catherine the Great, of where everything was perfect, and as soon as it got to the point where he was about to die, he was like, oh, shit, I actually have a lifespan, and I didn't plan for when I'm gone, and it's too late for them to fix it. But, yeah, I like this more than just talking about... I think I might do this more often, just talk about history and myths. Because I know I'm not good at explaining things, but I just like talking about it. I prefer talking about like the tactics and the way they thought rather than like their early life or childhood. Also, I like mythology some, but I'll have to read up on some of the stories. Like there's one that how much time do I have? Because I want to try and cut it off at about 10 o'clock my time because I want to keep I got a new job and I don't want to fuck up my sleep schedule already. But I'm gonna cut the stream here. Tomorrow I'll talk about it's a Japanese man. This is a legend about I think he was like fucking 6-7 foot tall. He was considered a giant among Japanese people because obviously the Japanese people are known for being of a shorter stature, And this was hundreds of years ago, back when they were supposedly even shorter, when everybody was a bit shorter, I guess. And this man was like 7 foot tall. So he was like a fucking Goliath, which was absolutely amazing. And it's a myth about him, one of my favorite badasses of all time. I'll try and do it justice, but I don't know if I can. It's so fucking cool. But well, thank you for watching this video or stream. Happy morning, noon, evening, what is it? Morning, noon, night, afternoon, brunch, wherever the hell it may be, whatever the hell time it might be, wherever the hell you may be. Hope you have a good time, I guess. Stay safe during this whole worldwide pandemic, and may everybody you know be safe during these trying times. Have a good whatever time it is.